Hey, good morning, everybody. Mike Ericson from the Roseville Optimist Club Civics Education Committee. I'm here today in beautiful downtown White Bear Lake at the White Bear Lake Boatworks Apartments Complex in the beautiful public room here. With us today for the Civics Education Committee is a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, Mayor Dave Bartholomy. Dave is going to share some perspectives with us today about civics education and really his role in that, serving as mayor of Circle Pines. Good morning, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad
Dave,
to be here,
if you could, why don't you let us know a little bit more about yourself, your current position, and the jobs that you've had that relate and put you in a perfect position to share your perspectives on civics education.
Well, thanks, Mike. I'm Dave Bartholomy. I'm the mayor of Circle Pines. I've been the mayor for 16 years, and prior to that, I was in the city council for a 4-year term. So that's 20 years. I should mention that when I started, I believed in term limits.
Yeah.
Not quite so much anymore. Seems like I've kind of gotten hooked. This $4,000 a year job is really something you really learn to enjoy and love. So before that, I've worked for a variety of things. I've worked for a couple governors. I have worked for a couple congressmen. I've worked for IBM and some other companies, and so it's kind of a mix of public and private sector things. But what you find is that when you can help your local community, it's just a whole nother level. I loved working for the governors, but it's neat to serve your neighbors.
Absolutely. I think working with neighbors as a retired longtime city administrator, is there nothing more gratifying than helping your neighbors?
Yeah, well, when I worked in Washington, D.C., or even in the Capitol in St. Paul, you're working on big issues, big challenges, but you really can't see kind of what you're doing. You don't see the impact of it. The beauty of being a mayor and being a city council member and being involved in your own town is that people drive by when you're out working on your lawn, they ask you questions, they talk to you, they thank you sometimes. A lot more appreciation than I think people might presume. They think that it's always a rough struggle. It's actually a lot of fun to serve your neighbors and to get some ideas from them and then see if you can carry them forward and improve your community.
So Dave, on that topic, how did you choose to get into local government? How did you choose to run for city council and ultimately the bigger job, the mayor?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When I had worked for a couple governors and worked for some congressmen, and my wife, Janice, had seen all that and seen the amount of hard work it was and the stress and the pressure. And we kind of had an arrangement when we got married almost 40 years ago that I would never run for public office. And so that was my deal. I was planning on keeping that pledge to her. And all of a sudden we went to a city council meeting that was about a development in our community. And development, adding apartment buildings, changing streets, these are the things that often drive people to get very excited. This was a free-for-all kind of city council meeting. People were hollering and it's very disruptive and people are very upset with what might be happening. My wife turned to me in that council meeting and said, you should run for the city council and help these people out. And I said, we have an understanding, remember, that I won't do that. And she said, no, I know, but they could really use your help. And so I did. I ran, won, became the city council. Then after a 4-year term, I wanted to try to be the leader of the group instead of one of the group. And so I ran for mayor. The current incumbent mayor decided not to run again. I took his place. And 16 years later, it's still there now. I'm still doing it. And it really is about sometimes either seeing something you wish you could see in your community, something you're worried about, but something drives people to run and to help and serve.
So Dave, tell us, what does the mayor do then for the city of Circle Pines?
And of course, it varies based on the size of the city. So Circle Pines is 5,000 people. Now there's 3 mayors basically that are full-time, and that's Minneapolis and St. Paul and Duluth. And the rest of them are really part-time, so you have other jobs. You're doing your regular 8 to 5 job, and then you go to a lot of nights and weekend meetings and stuff for being on the city council. So we look at budgets. How much money do you want to spend? How much do people want to spend? How much taxes do they want to have? And so how is the police department doing, or the fire department? What about the local library? All the kind of things of your streets and the maintenance, and then the parks, and how are the kids like in the community? So you're looking at all kinds of those pieces in partnership with your city staff, because you end up having the staff that does all the work. So we're just kind of almost like an advisory group, kind of telling them what we think ought to happen. They go look into it and come back to us, then we make our decisions.
You talked about your 8 to 5 job. Dave, what's your real job?
Well, in fact, tomorrow I'm retired. Today I am still employed by the state of Minnesota for the last 5 years. Before that, I worked for a nonprofit. Before that, I worked in the corporate sector. So I've been doing a lot of things. The last 10 or 12 years, I've been working in conflict resolution. So it's been an interesting end to my career to work both in city, local government, and then be a conflict management person, a mediator. So those two came together well. It's a good time for that package.
Congratulations on that. Dave, if you could, why don't you share you've been doing this a long time. What are some of the highlights? What are you particularly proud of?
Well, I've seen a lot of people come through and work on our city council, run, win, serve on the council, and then go back off to the community. That's been great to work with a lot of good people. We've had some great city staff, so I get to kind of help share my experiences and sometimes mentor them a bit. We've done a lot of things in our community. All our streets have been redone. That was a major undertaking that had been put off for a long time in an attempt to save money. But of course, at the end of the day, they need to be done, and now you've put it off, so it costs even more. We've done a lot of that work. I've had the chance to serve on a couple of commissions and things for different governors. So it's been a lot of fun, but most importantly, it's just that you go down the street and, people, these kids are riding their bikes, playing in our parks, enjoying life, and you think to yourself, I've just been a small part of helping them have a better life, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, that must give you a great sense of pride for your community. Excellent. Since our focus is on civics education, you talked about the kids, Dave. If you could tell us what it was like in your high school years, and did you ever think that civics education, particularly in high school, as it relates today, give us a perspective of that, what you did and how you were able to parlay that into public service.
Well, in almost every interview, someplace it comes up that I'm from Fargo, North Dakota, so I might as well put that out there and just admit it right away. I love Fargo, but one of the things interesting is when I was in high school, we had a day where if you wanted to, you could sign up and kind of shadow a public official. And I remember shadowing the city auditor. Now, math and everything was never my strength, but going through that process, watching how these people work together, hearing how they were looking out for the long range of the city, that kind of inspired me. And so nowadays at the Centennial School District, for the last 15, 20 years, I've been going over to the high school every spring, sometimes fall and spring, and talking to the high school seniors and talking to them about what their community is doing and how their community needs them. People think, well, it's somebody else. This person must have grown up as a 3-year-old wanting to be a mayor, and it's like, no, not at all. What happens is you just want to serve. And some people help being a confirmation guide, some people help being a Little League coach. For me, this is the way I help my community, and it's all about servant leadership. So there isn't really a mold for this person, this girl is going to become the mayor someday. It's really a matter of if you care for your community, if you want to help your neighbors, this is a tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely. We appreciate the fact that you do go over there to the school. So underscore again the importance of civics education to our high school students.
I'm shocked. You see these polls sometimes that talk about how much people understand what happens in government and everything else, and it sort of scares you a little bit that they really don't have a sense of how it works. And that's partly on us. We, as elected officials and as key staffers for cities and counties, we need to get out and talk to kids and tell them what we do and how it works, how important it is. So, for example, one time years ago, I was at the high school and talking with kids, and their biggest concern was the police department. They felt the police were sort of entrapping them. They were just waiting for them to make mistakes, always on the lookout to catch them doing something wrong. And so I sat down, then after that, went over and talked to our police chief, and I talked about our relationship between our high schoolers and the police department, how we need to figure out a way to make that better. And it doesn't mean that we don't give tickets for people who are doing something wrong, but I told them there's a lot of these are teachable moments. These are kids. They kind of roll through a stop sign. They do a little bit of, let's sit down and try to figure out if we can't talk to them, give them warnings. And so we've done that, and it's really changed the relationship over the last 10 years. So we don't have that struggle anymore because there needs to be a partnership there. So there's all kinds of opportunities for these kids to learn how important it is to both step up, to know that this is their tax dollars being spent. They're going to be paying a big chunk of money for these services. They want them delivered efficiently, and they want a say in it. And so it doesn't have to be a political science major or something. It can be anybody. I just was last night visiting with an old friend of mine, former mayor of Blaine, Tom Ryan, mayor for 30-some years. Great guy, salt of the earth guy, truck driver, did a tremendous job leading Blaine. So it's all of us working together. So every kid in those classes could be a city administrator, could be a mayor or a council member.
That's awesome. That's what civics education is all about. So Dave, what are some of the challenges then facing city governments?
Well, you know, you look around and you see all these folks that are often coming to council meetings or school board meetings and very upset about things. We live in a very difficult, very divided time.
We do.
And so people are showing up and they're angry. And a lot of times they might be confused. You know, they might be fearful of what's happening, both to them and to their families or to their neighborhoods if a certain development happens. And so it's really a time when, for us elected officials and staff people to sit and try to better understand why these folks are here, why the anger is at such a high level, and then try to think about how we can listen better. One of the things that I've really grown in my time as a mayor has been in learning to listen. I was really always a talker, and I wasn't really such a great listener. And when you start listening, you start saying, you know, what is it that you're taught? What is it you're worried about? What is the problem? Explain it to me. A lot of times people, they just want to be heard. They really just want to be heard. And so if you can be a little respectful, even if they're not giving you much respect, if you can try to listen and ask them questions, even if they're not listening to you, that's really the challenge for local government, is to try to model the kind of behavior you wish everybody else would have.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you said listening, obviously, number one, but are there any qualities or attributes or skill sets that are important to be successful like that?
Yeah, well, I think one of them would be patience.
Yeah.
We talked last night at my city council meeting in Circle Pines about the completion of the 35W project for we added some min-pass lanes and poured a lot of concrete. 165 miles of concrete were poured on our highway, and it makes the traveling so much nicer.
I just drove on your...
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
nice
beautiful.
that it's done. Yeah.
Nice. It was $200 million.
Oh.
I worked on it the whole 20 years that I've been involved in local government, and there were people that worked on it last night that were working on it longer. So it was a 25, 30-year project from start to finish. And so you need to be patient. One of the things that people sometimes get frustrating is that government doesn't just do what they want right now. And that's actually, I believe, kind of cooked into the mix, because you don't want to move so fast all the time. You want to have things take a little time. Let's think it through. Let's get everybody's opinion, not just the folks that come to a meeting hollering, and let's get a little depth in there, and we make better decisions. So I think patience is a big part. And then just servant leadership. You know, the fact that you want to serve. You know, what's the purpose of this? You know, some people think you want to run for local government, be a city council member or mayor, so you can run for legislator and then run for governor someday. There's some of us that we really just want to serve our community. We don't have political aspirations beyond that. We just want to do the best we can to help our neighbors.
Well, servant leadership is definitely where it's all about. Dave, we're gonna bring it all together and conclude with what do you hope our viewers, both our social studies teachers, our students that are going to watch this video, what do you hope they take away from this and sort of capturing the importance of civics education?
You bet. Well, first off, the local government, cities, counties, school boards, those townships, that's where the action is. That's where you can really make a difference. It's not about power. It's not about making a lot of money. You don't have a lot of either of those. It's about serving your neighbors. And I think the other piece is that once you start to look at your community and you start thinking, I wish our parks were a little better. I wonder why that road is in such tough shape, or whatever it might be. You start to realize, you know, in local government, you can make the difference, right? I mean, you can write a letter to the president or your congressman. That's great. Worked for a couple governors, and like I said, they're great people too. But it's at the local level you can really help. And so I think it's really neat that you can think about joining in kind of on a board, on a commission. Join the park board, be on a planning commission, and you can start making sure that you're improving your community. It isn't for special people. It isn't that there's a group of people handpicked in third grade that will certainly be the city council members or mayors or city administrators. Everybody in that classroom would bring a lot of good voices to the mix, and that's what we want in local government.
That's outstanding. Dave, on behalf of the Roseville Area Optimist Club and our Civics Education Committee, I'd like to personally thank you, and also for our friendship over the past 20 years. You're doing good work, and we appreciate it very much. Thanks, everybody.